I'm Ric Edelman, and this is The Truth About Money. On today's show,
she had a home care person, but that was literally dipping into her funds.
I don't want to have her get out of graduate school being $150,000 in debt.
And the newspaper says 401k coming up short.
That's all coming up right here, right now, on The Truth About Money. I know you're concerned about your money, but have you ever expressed any concern over your parents' money? Have you ever wondered if your parents might be victimized by financial abuse? Well, we asked that question to people out on the street, and here's what they had to tell us.
I had to get lawyers, they tried to take their home from them, that kind of thing.
I'm receiving phone calls from my father that he cannot pay his bills. Same thing with my mom. So we give them advice, we open our house to them if they cannot live, on their own anymore.
We're in the midst of hiring an elder care attorney. It's overwhelming.
The contractor, I guess, just ran off with money.
We had to really put my mom in a nursing home because she was by herself, but she had a home care person, but that was literally dipping into her funds.
I hope that they're smart enough to take safeguards against it.
Who is responsible for making sure that your money is safe and well managed? Well, you, of course. And who's responsible for making sure your parents' money is safe and well managed? If your parents are handling their own money, well, that might not be a good idea. The truth is that financial abuse of the elderly is a growing national problem. Don't assume that your parents can still manage their own money like they used to. Want to hear some stories of abuse? How about the handyman who makes home repairs that aren't necessary and then charges excessive fees for his work? Or an hourly caretaker who steals checks from her client? A daughter who withdraws money from her father's bank account and pockets the cash? These are all examples of elder financial abuse, and these crimes cost victims an estimated $2.6 billion every year. Think it can't happen to your parents? Well, think again. Half of Americans over age 65 show signs of having been financially abused. People call them asking for money. They don't feel confident making important financial decisions. They make loans or gifts that they can't afford to make. They get confused paying bills. And usually, their kids don't know anything about it. Just 15% of adult children say that their parents have been swindled. But a survey of their parents shows the figure is actually 50%. So if you think that your parents are fine, your confidence could be misplaced. Is it possible, just possible, that your parents are having trouble making financial decisions, or that they've been victims of financial abuse? It's not always easy to find out. Parents sometimes feel uncomfortable discussing their finances with their children. It may be uncomfortable for you too. You don't want to appear disrespectful, you don't want to invade your parents' privacy, and you certainly don't want to appear greedy. But you need to ask anyway. Just blame me. Tell them you went to see a financial advisor and he insisted that you have this conversation with your parents. Another good way to start the conversation is by discussing your own finances. By showing your willingness to be open, you'll make it easier for them to be open too. Find out how healthy their finances are, and if they seem to be having trouble understanding things, offer to help them to figure it out. It's also a good opportunity to talk about estate planning. Ask about getting a power of attorney so that you or another family member can take care of their finances should they ever become unable to do it themselves. And whether your parents are open to the idea of discussing money with you or not, keep an eye out for financial abuse. Here are 5 signs. First, are they buying services that aren't needed, like a new roof when the old one was just a few years old? Second, is there an unexplained disappearance of money or possessions? If artwork or appliances are suddenly gone, ask about it. Maybe mom decided to redecorate, or maybe someone has taken it. Third, are bills going unpaid? If the phone company is threatening to cut service, you need to find out why. Fourth, Are there large unexplained withdrawals or transfers from bank or investment accounts? Maybe it was for a necessary expense, or maybe someone is scamming mom or dad. And finally, be on the lookout for any individual, like a friend or caretaker, who suddenly develops a close bond with your parent. If that person seems to have excessive control over your parent, suddenly acquires expensive possessions, or limits your access to your parent, or maybe even acts defensively when you talk to them, well, those are all signs, potentially, of a financial abuser. Abusers take advantage of a victim's loneliness, their lack of knowledge, or outright confusion. And it might not be a friend or caretaker. Family members are the most common financial abusers. If you suspect that your parents are victims, contact law enforcement or your state's Adult Protective Services Department. Also contact the National Center on Elder Abuse at www.ncea.aoa.gov. You can also contact your parent's financial institution. Don't let your parents be a victim of financial abuse. You never really know what's going to happen during the Q&A session at my seminars. That's why they're so much fun to do. Check out this clip from a recent event.
My husband and I have 3 children, and we have set aside money that pretty much will cover in-state tuition for all 3 children. Our second child is in her 3rd year of college and doing exceptionally well, and received a lot of scholarship money for academic purposes. And basically, even though she's out of state, it's the equivalent to in-state tuition, so we're fine there. She has aspirations to go to law school. And although we'd like to help her, we're trying to figure out a strategy for the law school, because most of the law schools that she's looking at, we were looking at, and they cost between $30,000 and $45,000 for most of them, and I don't want to have her get out of graduate school being $150,000 in debt.
We need to be very, very careful before we allow our children to incur 6 figures of debt to go to graduate school or postgraduate school, because they don't understand in many cases the economic implications of their decisions. That's our job as parents, to make sure that we're giving them that level of guidance. Having said that, we need to have the conversation with the student to help them understand the economic reality of going to law school, what it's going to cost, how to minimize that expense, and how to figure out a way to minimize the damage so that simultaneously they can prepare themselves for a career in law or medicine or engineering or whatever it happens to be they want to go towards, with an understanding that due to the debt they incur, they're going to have to target their specialty when they graduate in an area where it generates the income that they're looking for. There are some employers that will pay the way for school. The military is famous for this. In exchange for you providing X number of years of service following graduation, law and medicine both are involved in that area. There are a number of other employers that will engage in the same activity. You need to try to go through the grant and scholarship route and let that be a key determining factor as to whether she goes to school or not. But again, you need to take one final fundamental view of recognizing the financial implication and saying, this is an investment in my child's future. Is it a good one? And in many cases, your answer will be, yes, it absolutely is. The $100,000 it costs to get the degree is nothing compared to the 30-year career that they'll enjoy with that degree. Otherwise, if they're just doing it out of blue sky, hey, it sounds great, and I'd rather do that than go get a job upon graduation, and I don't know what kind of law I want to practice or what have you, you need to just have very serious career conversations with your daughter to make sure that what you're doing is genuinely in her best interest long term. Want to test your financial literacy? That's not an option. Here's our daily quiz.
A revocable living trust helps you lower your taxes, helps you avoid probate, both, neither.
Rick, my question is about insurance. It seems every time you turn around, somebody's trying to sell you insurance for one thing or another. And I wanted to get your views on which types of insurance are the most important to have and how much to get when you need those insurances. And maybe you could spend a little bit of time talking about long-term care.
It's a great question because insurance is something we all love to hate. and there have been so many jokes over the years and in so many films. My favorites are from Woody Allen when he starts ragging on insurance agents. But the fact is that insurance is vitally important. Nobody who ever needed insurance was unhappy that they had it. It's really that simple. And everybody in the financial services industry, myself included, can relate stories of very close friends of ours or family members to whom we could have sold insurance to but didn't, and then a crisis occurred and we feel guilty not having imposed our will on them in that process, which is what motivates a lot of insurance agents to try to help prevent such crises for other people. Insurance is a product that has to be sold. It's generally not bought because nobody likes to buy insurance. I don't want to spend the money on it, and besides, it's not going to happen to me, right? Bad things are what happens to the other guy, so why bother buying this stuff? That's why the government requires that you buy auto insurance, because if it was optional, nobody would buy it. So we recognize that insurance is sold, and because of the sales tactics associated with that project, it can be distasteful for a lot of folks. The truth, though, is that insurance is a fundamental element of a financial plan. Most people turn to financial planners because you want to create wealth. And you're turning to us for investments of your life savings so that you can grow the value of your assets. And that's great. But as a financial planner, I want to look for what might go wrong while we're constructing that financial plan. And that is the very simple way you analyze your insurance need. What might go wrong? And if it goes wrong, will it prove to be an annoyance, an inconvenience, or financial devastation? Let me ask you a question. If you're robbed and someone steals your shoes, is that an annoyance? Is that an inconvenience? Or is that financial devastation? That's an annoyance, right? That's an inconvenience. Do you need insurance on your shoes? Probably not. But what if you are assaulted, and as a result of that physical assault, you are disabled and unable to work, and you can't earn an income any longer? Now, is that an annoyance? Is that an inconvenience? Or is that financial devastation? Forget about the mental and emotional issues associated with it. Is it a financial devastation? Therefore, we need to protect your ability to earn an income because you might get injured or you might fall ill. And that argues for disability insurance, to protect your income. I can't protect you from having something bad happen, but I can protect you from losing income as a result of something bad happening. So disability insurance becomes important. Same thing with life insurance. If you were to die today, who suffers financially? Well, if there's no spouse or children who suffer financially, no other family members who suffer financially, then you don't need life insurance. But on the other hand, if you're married to someone who's a stay-at-home parent and you've got 3 kids who are all under the age of 10 and you die today, all of a sudden we've got a big insurable need. So we need to buy life insurance on you to protect them. How much insurance? We need to do some analysis and calculation to figure out the proper amount of insurance. How long are you going to need it? What's the best way to go about getting it? You do the same process for auto insurance and health insurance, and you do the same thing for long-term care insurance, as you suggested. What's the risk that at some point in your life you will need long-term care? The statistics are 1 out of 2 Americans over 65 are going to need long-term care services. And nationally, the average cost is $7,000 a month. 84 grand a year. Can you pay it? How long can you pay it without interfering with the lifestyle of the rest of your family? That helps us determine whether or not you need the insurance and how much insurance you need to buy. And it's really that simple. We're trying to protect against a financial loss so that while we're busy creating wealth, something bad doesn't get in our way. And that's really what it comes down to. So we believe very strongly in insurance, but we only want to get the minimum necessary to get the job done and move on to the rest. Where we deviate from a lot of people who sell insurance is that they like to try to create wealth with insurance. They sell life insurance and other products as investments. Not true. Insurance is designed to protect against losses. You shouldn't be using insurance to get rich. And that is an approach that can help you minimize the cost of that insurance. They tell me I have a face for radio. I can prove it too. Watch this. Your question is?
Yeah, a good friend of mine said I should set sell orders on my 401ks and retirement funds to whatever my threshold for comfort is, that he thinks things are going to drop down 20 or 30% correction again, just like they've done twice in the last 11 years. Both times he recommended it before, he was 100% dead on, and I didn't do it. So I'm thinking I should listen to his advice this time.
Well, go ahead. Listen to his advice.
So you think that is a decent thing to do?
No, I think it's pretty stupid.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, and the reason?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. The mere fact that he got lucky twice in the past and made that correct call is one thing. Did he tell you when to go back in? I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, I told you to get out because the market was going to drop, but did he tell you when to get back in? Because that's the other half of the equation and makes it extraordinarily difficult to do it.
Well,
second of all, wait a minute, Jeffrey. Second of all, if instead you had completely ignored his advice and never got out, guess what? You would today have as much money as you'd had before without having to worry about getting out and getting back in at the right times. So the fact that he was right at the short term was totally irrelevant at the long term.
Right. Unless you need that money within the next 3 to 5 years, and meaning you need the principal sum of that money, then ignore the advice. It's completely irrelevant.
And a better way to try to protect against losses is through diversification, not through putting in loss orders or stop limit orders or any of that stuff.
So what it comes down to is a very simple question. If your account were to fall 20 or 30%, how would you feel emotionally? Would you panic and would you be terribly scared and sell emotionally because you couldn't sustain the loss and fearful that you'd incur even further losses from there? And if that's the case, you shouldn't own those kinds of investments in the first place. Volatility means that prices drop and then they rebound and then they drop again and then they rebound. Let's say, hypothetically, you own an asset at $10 a share and you put in a limit order at $8 because you don't want to suffer more than a 20% loss. So the market drops to $8 and you get out. But then the market quickly jumps back up to $9. Congratulations, you're out at 8 and you just lost half of the recovery.
A revocable living trust helps you avoid probate.
Dallas Salisbury is CEO of the Employee Benefit Research Institute, and he's been there ever since it was founded in 1978. EBRI is a nonpartisan research organization that focuses much of its attention on 401k plans, and EBRI produces a huge amount of data that helps policymakers in Washington make important decisions about our nation's retirement plans. Dallas, great to have you with us.
Rick, great to see you again.
So you've been involved with 401ks pretty much since their inception in the 1970s, and it's fun to poke shots at 401ks simply because of the data that you yourself produce. The average 401k balance in this country is?
If you look at everybody, it's about $67,000. The good news is for people who've been in one job for 30 years and have kept contributing, the average right now is just under $200,000.
So we've got 60 grand on average in the country, and people who have been working for 30 years, meaning they're in their 50s or 60s, have 200 grand.
Right.
Dallas, you can't retire on 200 grand. And that's the criticism that people have of 401ks.
People need to begin saving early. They need to learn it at home, they need to learn it from their parents, and they need to do it at school.
Ask anyone on the street. Everybody is going to say, look, I know I need to save, and I know I need to save now, and I know I need to save more, but I just can't afford it.
Well, our surveys suggest that it's not that many people say I can't afford it. They say, well, yes, I could afford to save an extra $25 or $50, $75 a day or a week. It's just I never quite get around to doing it. Secondly, it's, well, you know, I keep seeing things that I want, and I succumb to that instant gratification.
The impulse buy.
The impulse buy. And then it's, well, and I know, you know, my parents, yeah, they're in their 80s, and I could live a long time, but then again, I might not. I need to enjoy life now. So you end up with a combination of factors, and then you put on top of that, most advertising, most television is about feeling good now.
Although we know we should be educating consumers and motivating them to do better, why don't we just do an end run around them and force them to participate without their active involvement? And you were instrumental in having a fundamental rule changed by Congress and the Department of Labor that said when you join a company, we're automatically going to put you in the 401k, whereas in the past, you had to voluntarily choose to join.
Automatic enrollment, automatic contribution escalation, the movement towards pre-diversified investment allocation funds so that money doesn't just sit because people have procrastinated, they haven't taken the time, and this ends up, it gets them in the plan, as you say. It moves them up that contribution ladder over time automatically. And most of the time, you're getting at least a small raise every year. So you may just not feel as much of it in your paycheck, and it's going there as that paycheck for tomorrow.
So your personal financial future is up to you. We're going to try through regulation and legislation, policy making, we're going to try to make it easier for you to save for your retirement by creating a workplace opportunity for you to save, do it on a tax-deductible basis, automate it so that it's simple and easy, have the employer contribute to add some of the money into that plan. But at the end of the day, if you don't participate, and if you don't save enough, and if you don't start soon enough, well, it's your own dumb fault.
It's your own problem because there was a recent newspaper article, and they've been appearing for years. And the newspaper says 401k coming up short, IRA coming up short, Social Security comes up short. Why? Because none of them will do it for you.
Tell us a little bit about the work that the Employee Benefit Research Institute does beyond mere 401k analysis.
Choose to Save is something we began with the government in the mid-1990s. It's touched tens of millions of Americans. We have any length public service announcement or video on there people want. If their attention span's short, they can watch the 15-second wake-up call. And if they're a little more of a glutton for punishment, there are 1-hour educational specials there.
Choose, meaning this is something you must actively choose to do. It's a verb. You must choose to do it. And what you want them to choose to do is to save. If you just do that, it kind of solves pretty much all other problems.
It solves the problem of not having emergency money. It solves the problem of not being able to go out for that extra burger or piece of pizza or the movie. No, and it allows you that option of retirement, of not having to work forever. It's a wise thing to do.
And you also created an opportunity to focus the nation's attention on this with America's Saves Week.
And we do that once a year along with the Consumer Federation of America and America Saves. It's the early part of every year, and then we continue every single week during the year. There's a new message on that site. There are financial planning tools there that help people do a financial checkup so that they at least have a picture of where they are.
You also do a consumer confidence survey, and you're able to compare year over year, decade over decade, changes in attitudes about how people are feeling about their retirement.
And what we've seen is that there's more and more realism out there. Is over time, more people are planning. More people say, I'm not so sure I'm getting it done. The proportion that are very confident keeps going down. And some people might say, well, isn't that bad news? I look at it and say, that's great news because it means there's a realism taking hold. People are understanding.
It's easy to be cavalier. Oh, everything will be fine. I'm confident.
It's a choice I have to make, as you say.
Dallas Salisbury, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to see you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dallas. Before we go, do you think Medicare will cover all of your health expenses once you're in retirement? Well, think again. Medicare covers just 64% of health care costs, according to the Employee Benefit Research Institute. You can expect to pay for almost 20% of your medical expenses. Private insurance and government programs pay the rest. That 20%, though, could cost you and your spouse hundreds of thousands of dollars. Make sure you factor in the costs of retiree health care when you're doing your financial plan. And that's the truth about money. I'm Ric Edelman. Thanks for watching.